want to say, well, thanks to Emma and Imran, really, because one thing I rarely do, ever, is take stock of what I do. I'm so busy just getting on with it. I've got 2 small kids, and it sort of shocks me sometimes to actually stop and say, what am I actually doing and why am I doing it? So it was a challenge, and today's other challenge, really, if I'm going to put it back to Emma, is that I think this is part of my development, by the way, and she chose a title for me that I kind of went, oh, really? Is this me? So, Playfulness and Subversion for Serious Change, or as I like to put it, making it up as you go along, okay? And this is a personal story because that's the only way I can do this stuff, really, because I find there should be a question mark at the end of this, which is there any serious change? Am I subversive? Which leads me nicely onto the next slide. Oh, I need to press this, not on my own iPad. So I cast about on Twitter because I kind of thought, I'm not really that subversive, am I? And got a few responses back saying, well, you kind of are a little bit. And this one fitted exactly what I wanted to talk about, which is about asking questions, which, if you do follow me on Twitter, can be quite painful sometimes. I'm constantly asking questions. So I don't know the answer to anything, quite frankly, which is why Twitter comes into play. You help me kind of understand the world a bit. So sometimes I can ask questions I had no idea was going to result in a kind of sort of flurry of people's responses. So I'm obviously hitting on some things. Oh, this one again. So this is where it kind of started. I'm going to tell you a story of what happened back in 2005 and took us to 2012. So this, well, I'll come back to in a minute, but lodge it in your brains. And this is where we recently ended up on Briggate, which is a main shopping street in Leeds, if you don't know it. It's the highest in terms of rateable value of properties and rent. So actually when I did this presentation or put it together, I kind of felt, that's pretty good going. This is what used to be the Borders store, which we took over for a day to talk about how our city centre and our experience of our cities could be more playful in a very commercial place. So going back to when I was growing up, a little bit of biography. I was an only child to a single mother in a council house in Gloucestershire, and I was bored, really, really bored. And I was quite lonely as well, actually. So I used to make radio shows for myself, which I don't think there's any evidence, luckily. So I'm kind of outing myself, but it was actually called Radio Fun Time, and I think it probably makes sense of everything I do now. Quite scary. So with that idea that actually it's very beige in the 70s, I don't know if you have a kind of colour association, beige and orange really. And I spent the rest of my life trying to avoid the beige and orangeness of life, I think. So another thing about creativity, which I think is a key part to all of this. So on reflecting about subversiveness and playfulness, I started thinking, what is it that really, really motivates me, and am I sort of brave enough to put it out there? And I suppose what I really care about is that we as human beings are inherently creative, and it doesn't take much to switch people on to understanding what's good about life. And that's my firm belief. We can spend all our time moaning and griping, but actually within us we need to remove the blocks to creativity. And why should we do that? So that we can start to feel a bit more ownership about where we live. And if we can have a small creative intervention into our day-to-day life, then we start to have a bit more ownership. That's truly what I believe. So when John Popham, on Twitter again, you see I do a lot with Twitter, sent me this link, I went, yeah, that's everything, including making an absolute idiot of yourself in front of everybody else, so that everybody else can kind of go, oh, it can't be that bad. So I kind of see that as a role as well, which is coming back to playfulness, be a bit of a clown because then everybody else thinks it's okay. So, a little bit about where it started, the 2005 pot of chili jam. We were living on a sort of in terraced houses in Armley, which is a typical kind of working class area, and just having more and more street parties, well not street parties, street get-togethers, and a group of us decided we wanted to have a big street party. Or actually, the real truth is we wanted to have a party of just for 10 of us. And we thought, well, we can't really do that without really annoying everybody, so let's go and ask everybody else to be part of our party. So what we did was the formation of my marketing career, which was to go around and knock on everybody's house with a leaflet that we'd created, which had lots of lies on it, including there being 57 cats in the neighbourhood, but some truth as well about the best chocolate cake maker, and just kind of telling people about their own neighbourhood in a way. which led to this amazing party you can see here. I think the fact it was called Jam Up the Back Passage as well helped slightly. And we had about, 200 people kind of come from everywhere, and really, really creative people as well. That was our kind of inclination, that this idea that there is lots of creative people in Armley, there's nowhere for us to hang out, let's do this kind of stuff. So the subversion bit, I suppose looking back, yes, it was quite subversive to set up an Armley tourist board, especially at the time when, if you did a sort of Google search in 2005, it was #1 Chavtown. So it's kind of saying, well, in that context, we've got to look for what's good. And actually, I like the idea of a tourist board because we can just blatantly go for all the nice stuff in life. So it led to this moniker of the Lady Mayoress of Armley, which I've never quite shaken off. Obviously, because I have the plaque outside my door, so that doesn't really help matters. But I think the fact that you kind of had created a character, I suppose, so I've been quite playful. And the joy of having characters, because then she was a bit of a kind of hyacinth bouquet type, was that I needed someone else as well. So there was Jam Siren, the PR agent, who basically just took the mickey gently out of the Lady Mayoress. So all of this stuff kind of lived on the blog. A bit about playfulness, really, is turning stuff inside out as well. So I was exploring and playing with Blogger, Google Analytics. So I kind of thought, why not just paste Google Analytics onto this blog? There were people actually coming from Florida to the website. Why are they doing that? So then we kind of found out people coming from Florida used to live in Armley. So it became this beautiful kind of conversation piece, really. To cut a bit of a long story short, we ended up, because I got really, really good at marketing through this, winning the friendliest street in Britain, as voted for by the listeners of Radio 5 Live, which we've only just lost to somewhere in Wales. And the key thing that sort of permeates everything I do now is a moment when somebody who had been quite reclusive before we did all this stuff, brilliant ceramicist, said to me she felt a different responsibility now that there was this label for our street, which was to be friendlier to people. And that was I kind of look back on that moment and think, that's kind of what it's all about. Our aspirations were to have fun, really, throughout everything we did. But if it can sort of trick that switch in people's head, which is, I want to feel differently about where I live, that's what I really care about, is that we've all got the potential to live where we live, but we've also got a responsibility to as well. So just some more pictures, really, of the kind of stuff we've got involved in. Starting from the first calendar that you can see here with Riff. That was another thing. It's like, take pictures of the stuff that you actually like, that makes you look at where you live. Through to the next year, his son, who was also one of the winners the year before, being pictured on a billboard. So it's at this point when sort of your confidence grows, you start to do more and more things and see it evidenced in the wider world. A billboard about selling the next calendar that he was involved in. I don't think you can really pan in, but the cover of the calendar was a cake, which, I don't know if you know Armley, but there's a gateway building called Mike's Carpets. It's been run down, but pretty much it's a very significant building, so someone made an amazing cake at a cake competition. As time's gone on, I've noticed in this sort of cycle of doing stuff that we just get a bit more professional with the way we do things, so we have better relationships and partnerships. And, that's great, and it makes people take it seriously. But it also comes to a point where it stops losing its fun as well, because you've kind of got this responsibility that you never asked for. And I think kind of in a way that's what happened with the Armley Tourist Board. We've got a Flash website which was made in Drupal. Nobody wanted to engage with it. It lost its charm, and I ran out of energy with it, really. Then I had kids. So, whilst I was nursing a 6-month-old baby, I decided I would set up what was called the Culture Vulture. This little idea I had was that there was nobody really telling the story of culture in Leeds in a way that actually I wanted to read, and that's where it started from. So which mixed the big stuff like the Northern Ballet, the opera, etc., to the stuff that was happening like Cake, the Marvellous Tea Dance Ladies, and putting them on the same page as each other. The sort of flotsam and jetsam, the vibrancy, not just the, we've got this amazing production on. So Culture Vulture, again, was born out of very little resource. I worked very closely with a lady called Michelle Duxbury-Townsley in the beginning days. And this is kind of where we're at now. We've got brand guidelines, and it's, that's 3.5 years. I'm really proud of our brand guidelines as well, because it makes you feel really grown up. But the thing I love about our brand guidelines is play with this Culture Vulture logo, break it. We've always been about open sourcing, and I will point to Imran as being very important in that story, because we did a bar camp back in 2009. And the message really was just get on and do it. Don't wait for perfection. And I took that incredibly to heart, which was like, perfection, yeah, that's so boring. Let's just get on and do stuff out there. So This is the website. We put on events, we showcase other people's work. We're all about being creative. So it's not about just consuming information, it's challenging us with each other to come together and have conversations. Sometimes that gets kind of talked about as, what do you call it, just hot air, just talking. Where's the action? Which infuriates me massively. So through the events, we've done stuff like a jelly wobble party, which this wonderful one at the bottom won. Not only did it win though, Katie from Leeds won this fantastic KY jelly, with her KY jelly in fact, but there was an artist who was presenting, who was an exhibitor for the Northern Art Prize called Lubena Himid, who loved what we were doing so much that she actually gave us a prize from her exhibition of little people. So Katie now is the owner of a Lubena Himid, so it's that kind of connectivity that we're having fun, but there's some other stuff that's going on too. We did Friday picnics, we've done big conversation events. We just keep doing stuff as it seems to be relevant. So the culture vulture still continues. But amongst all this was a sense of culture is a word that not everybody loves. They kind of go, that's not really for me. And I'm always conscious of what would entice my next door neighbour or my mum to do something. If I put the label culture on it, they immediately go, mm-mm. So there's that going on. Then there's also this notion of what is play. So it's only now that I can kind of go, there was a narrative to all of this. I never really saw it, but the play bit for me is the really important bit. It's about the lowest entry point for people. So how can we be together in a joyous way, which is what you're going to come for, is play and fun. No matter how economically difficult times are, we need to have fun together. That's my absolute principle in all of this. It seems frivolous sometimes, but actually it doesn't cost anything. So I guess the bit about serious change bothers me a lot because it seriously changed my life, and evidence it's having the blindest bit of difference to anybody else is, I suppose, borne out by the more and more sort of champions and people that come along who want to do more stuff, who can't pitch up every time. So our first event back in beginning of 2012 was in City Museum, about 150 people. They thought they were coming along to discuss whether Leeds needed a playground, which obviously it does. It's very dull and everybody says there's a lack of colour. Imran might even be in this picture somewhere actually. But what we did when everybody got there, once we got them captive, was make them build dens. And so they were all ages. And some people didn't like it, some people did like it. And one of those moments where you kind of go, I think I'm on the right track here, is when the heads of countryside and parks, Chris, turned up in a very sort of severe pinstripe suit, had his arms folded like this, and said to me, I'll be out of here in 20 minutes if it's no good. And I was like, okay. He was there till the end, and he was the most competitive den builder I've ever come across. And it's kind of it's that sort of, who's the biggest cynic in the room? And Jamie Oliver does this stuff all the time, which is find the people who are going to derail stuff and work out how to get them excited too, because that's what it's all about. So we have, the second part of the day was, there's all this stuff around us. What if we just did things a little bit differently with what already exists? What if we could use our imagination? But what if we actually started to do something about this, not wait for it to happen? Our second event had a guy called Scott Burnham come, and we called it Urban Mischief, because the idea was, had about 40 people come to this. We had him inspire us about stories of playfulness across the globe, what he'd kind of call urban reboots or reprogramming of existing spaces with the way that you looked at street furniture, or just pairs of googly eyes, or things that make you smile. So we had great big inspiration, and then people got into groups, and they were given a £10 budget for group, and they had to go and do something, an intervention within a certain zone in Leeds. Well, we had sought permission, so they knew that there was a sort of level of safety. And they were allowed to kind of just, make people smile. That was the idea. So what you see here is people making swings, creating new signage, doing this funny thing about that looked like a diving board. So they kind of created this pair of legs, put a danger sign up, people walking past it going, what is this? And we got some amazing feedback from this event actually, which was, I didn't know I needed permission to play. And actually I don't really. As long as I'm responsible, I can do it. And, it was just an event, but hopefully it just starts to change people's thinking a little bit about who owns what and what your opportunities are to make people smile. I guess every time I come to a sort of block, I think, what can we do about this? So Leeds is very corporate and commercial, and I kind of thought, we'll go to the head of the the beast, I think is a right way of putting it. So I do have a good relationship with ASDA already, so it was a bit of a no-brainer when they came to me and said, we want to do a team building event. And I said, well, I kind of want to do a team building event, but what you really want to do is get out into Leeds, because you're on the other side of the river and you work too hard and you don't know what's underneath your noses. So what we're going to do is take your team and match them with creative projects that could probably do with your team who are very clever at sort of whole web design, marketing, it's their .com team. What about if you could listen to these creative projects tell their story and then help them tell their story better, because we're kind of used to talking to each other and ourselves most of the time. So what if we had a fairly warm but not entirely clued up group of people to sort of help shape those stories. So we introduced them to venues that they didn't know existed underneath their noses. They spent their lunch money in there, so there's already an economic benefit. And we got them taking pictures of things that they didn't really know sort of thematically through Leeds, and ended up in a big top, which just happened to be in town for Unlimited Theatre's Giant and the Bear, and they weren't using it that day. And everybody did this big show and tell at the end about what they'd learned through the day. I thought it was, there were issues with that event actually that we not repeat, but it was pretty interesting that people from ASDA's perception of their own city. So finally, I don't know how I'm doing for time, I will wrap up very quickly. This is the inside of Borders. We took over Borders for a day. I keep talking about Borders because it was a shop up until it shut about 3 years ago that was the first experiential shop in Leeds, where you could kind of go in and drift there for hours, and it felt safe. No matter what time of day you went there, you could just enjoy yourself. You could read books, and they didn't really care, which is probably why they went out of business. They didn't seem to care anyway, if you read books. And I ended up spending my life fortune in there, so it worked. So it lay empty for 3 years, and it just seemed like an absolute travesty to have this place which had such resonant value on Briggate. And because there's new developments happening in Leeds, there's Trinity, which is shopping arcade, and there's also going to be Hammerson's, which is called Eastgate. This kind of sits between those two interesting sort of new developments, and it sort of poses the question. There's a thing going on with Leeds City Council which is called Child Friendly City. We've been working very closely, so I don't know if it's subversive to work very closely. To my mind, it's kind of find the Trojan horses. You need to make something happen, so don't just say, well, I'm going to throw bricks at you because you're an institution. It's like, what are the ways, like if you're Mercury, what are the ways to actually make things happen? So working with Leeds City Council on their child-friendly initiative to say, what are we going to do, you, me, everybody, to place play in the heart of the commercial offer in Leeds. So the fact that they backed that feels like that kind of ticks the serious change could happen. It gives us faith that actually we can invest our time because they're part of this narrative too. So what's next? Okay. So the thing I've learned is actually you just got to put your heart on your sleeve and just go for it. So this may or may not happen. But what we'd really like to see, and it's one of the things that came out of the event we did in Borders, which was a group of people saying what they'd actually like to see happen in Leeds, which made it more playful. One of the ideas, which kind of gathered quite a lot of interest, was the idea about robots. And so kind of what we'd like to do is look at the notion of robots through speeches, making events, looking at past, present and future, and then culminating in a massive big parade into Leeds of the likes nobody's ever seen before. Why not? So, surprisingly, when you go and talk to really serious people about this, they kind of go, yeah, robots are really good. And you're kind of going, okay, this might actually happen, now I need to find £200,000. So kind of that's where we're at. So if any of you want to donate towards that £200,000 target, obviously see me after. And there's a few things which I would just say, you can't go wrong if you wear your heart on your sleeve, because people seem to relate to that. And Dare to Dream, that's not exactly new to any of you guys here, I'm sure. And then a big list of things about starting small, just getting on, doing it, just keep going, ask questions, that's it, and that's me. Thank you.